MSM, welcome in. It is great to see you. My name is Sam, and we've got some announcements to get to today. But first, we have a really pressing topic to discuss, you and I. I need your opinion and thoughts on if we were to do away with daylight savings time forever, would you be for it or against it? Just keep it one way, or do you like the shift in the balance of like, hey, we fall back, we gain an hour, or we spring forward, we lose an hour? Do you like that rhythm? Or would you rather just keep it one way forever? I think I would rather keep it one way forever. And if we could keep it where we gained that hour and things got dark a little bit sooner, I would love it. I know that's not a popular opinion to have, but I like it. When it gets darker a little bit earlier, it makes it feel like the night has begun and time to like do important things is over. Now we get to have fun because it's like evening and we get to watch movies and play video games and hang out with our friends. Like, that's what I would prefer. But I don't think many of y'all agree with me. If you do, tell me. If you don't, tell me. Either way, we want to hear your opinions and thoughts on that as we get into some announcements today. And they are this. It is welcome to MSM. We are so glad that you're here. Truly, we're thankful that you are like hanging out with us today, wherever you're watching this from, whenever you're watching this. We are so thankful that you choose to watch this. Let us know if you enjoy it and share it with someone that hasn't seen it yet. Next thing is that you can follow us online as well. It's not just a YouTube channel. We also have an Instagram channel that you can follow us, or an Instagram page rather, that you can follow us at CPCFCMSM. That stands for Central Peninsula Church, Foster City Middle School Ministry. That's who we are. And you can give us a follow on Instagram, on YouTube, or your parents can follow us on Facebook. Now, what are the benefits of doing that? Your page is already full enough as it is, and if you don't have social media, that's okay. Take a deep breath with me. Exhale. That's okay. We keep you up to date on everything via email and text. But if you do have social media, you can keep up to date with us that way as well. You'll be able to hear all sorts of things like our MSM Bible Challenge. This is something that we've got going on currently during our series called Moving On. This is our way of being able to read the Bible as a student ministry together. So there's not tons of people doing that aren't a part of MSM ministry. It's just us. It's just us students and leaders that are part of MSM able to read this Moving On plan, which is all centered around our teachings on Sunday. So you can totally join that and comment on each day's reading if you'd like by going to the bottom of the email that we send out to your parents every Tuesday, I believe it is now, or you can click the link in the video description below. You can also go to our Instagram page and find it that way as well. There's big links up there that'll be able to get you right to our YouVersion app and have you download it if you haven't already. And you can also go straight to the plan by clicking that link once you've downloaded the YouVersion app. It'll take you directly in there. Next announcement we have is our baptism. It's Easter baptism. We're going to be able to register for this at cpc.org/events. And we want to make sure that we're all registered for this by April 3rd. Make sure we're signed up for this by April 3rd. If this is something that interests you, again, click the link in the description below. You can go to our Instagram or that email that our team sends out each and every single week. There will be a link in that too for our baptism. We would love to be able to talk to you about baptism if it's something you're interested in, but you might not know a whole ton about. We would love to be able to make that connection with you and have a conversation with you about what baptism means and how you can get baptized. It's a great idea. I'll spoil it for you just a little bit. Jesus told us to do it. It wasn't a requirement for salvation. It wasn't a requirement in order to be on Team Jesus, following him, but it was encouraged of him. So we should probably talk about it and do it. And we would love to be able to walk through exactly what that looks like and give you more detail about it as well. We can do that once you sign up by April 3rd. Last thing we want to talk about is life groups are every single Tuesday night from 7 o'clock to 8:15. We meet right here in the students' room to talk about spiritual practices and how to implement them into our lives. It's a shorter message, maybe anywhere from 10 to 12 minutes, and then we break out into small groups and get to hang out. Before service, we get a ton of games, and after as well. So it's a great time to be able to relax, rest, unwind, and also learn about who Jesus is and how we can use our life to follow him. Last but not least, we want to say thank you so much for being a part of MSM, and we hope you enjoy what you're about to watch. We believe God has a special word just for you. So let's go ahead and pray before we get into today's message. Jesus, thank you so much for bringing us to MSM. We would ask you that our hearts would be awake, that our minds would be alive and attentive to you and what you have to say to us, God. We ask you to help us forget anything that gets said that's not of you, and we ask you to help us remember everything that you want us to remember. Let our mind go off in healthy tangents that help us understand how this message and how your word applies to our life. Help us focus, listen, and learn. We ask you for that, and we thank you for that. In Jesus' name, amen. Well, all right, MSM, it is great to see you. My name is Sam, and we are going to jump into week 3 of our series called Moving On, where we're talking about all things forgiveness. And this week, what we're going to zero in on, what we're going to focus on, is how many times do we have to forgive someone? How many of y'all been there with me before where somebody does something to you, they pick on you in a way, maybe they say something accidentally that they know hurts you, and you have to forgive them for it, and then they do it again and again and again. It's called being human. Sometimes we make the same mistake over and over and over again. Sometimes we're the person making the mistake. Sometimes other times, other people, our friends, our neighbors, our classmates, parents, teachers, coaches are the ones that need our forgiveness. And sometimes it can lead us to that emotional breaking point of going, ugh, how many times do I actually need to forgive this person? I remember growing up with my brother, this was probably something that he and I wondered all the time because we used to get on each other's nerves growing up. How many of y'all have a sibling that you love, you wouldn't want to do life without, but sometimes it feels like, oh my goodness, they are getting on my last nerve, and it feels like it's over and over and over again. I know I did that to my brother growing up, and he was very gracious in forgiving me. So we're going to get to the bottom today of how many times do I need to forgive that person that messes with me, that picks on me, that says something that I don't like. And again, another big disclaimer right at the top of our teaching. This is not to say that we should stay quiet when we're being hurt. This is not to say that we should stay quiet when there's abuse present in our life or somebody else's life. We love you way too much. Jesus loves you way too much. You are way too valuable to Jesus and to us to stay in a scenario that is abusive and stay quiet. Please come talk to us about it. Reach out to one of your small group leaders about it. Reach out to a teacher or an officer, a parent, somebody that can help and intervene with that. We're not talking about those types of scenarios right now. What we're talking about is more that sibling, classmate relationship. How many times do I need to forgive this person for, like I remember there was this one time, there was a little, I think I've told you all this story before, but it just popped into my head. It's a great example. There's a little girl that used to sit behind me when I was in what we used to call children's church, right? So think maybe 5, 6-year-old Sam sitting in children's church, and this little girl used to kick the back of my chair all the time. I think she just thought it was funny, and I really got aggravated by it. That was one of those times in my mind where I'm like, how many times am I going to have to forgive her for this? Like, it's getting on my nerves. We're talking more about stuff like that. So apparently this was a thing in Jesus's time when he was on earth with us here, because the disciples, some of Jesus's best friends, had that question for him. So if it's on your mind, if it's in your heart, chances are God's word already addresses it. That's why we love digging into our Bibles. So let's read Matthew chapter 18, verse 21 and 22. We're going to read from the New Living Translation today. Really puts a good spin on this, exactly what the author intended it to be. So we're going to be able to read together here in Matthew chapter 18, verse 21 and 22. This is a conversation that we're about to read that happened between Peter and Jesus. So I would imagine that before this conversation happened, Peter probably had words with somebody. There was probably a disagreement. There was probably a scuffle, which kind of debunks that whole theory of like Christians never have any conflict in their life. They never have any tension. They're just like perfectly peaceful people with never any like anger or irritation ever. No, that's not true. Peter was irritated with somebody, and that's probably why this came up. If not, he was getting asked this question by somebody who was, and he's like, I don't know. I'm going to go ask my teacher, my best friend, Jesus, and that's exactly what he does. So we're going to see today how many times we actually have to forgive somebody. It says this, then Peter came to him being Jesus, and asked, Lord, how often should I forgive someone? So since he puts the personal spin on it, I'm going to go ahead and assume that he was asking this for himself. There was probably something or someone in his life that really aggravated him. Maybe it was somebody stealing his pillow all the time. Maybe it was somebody using his toothbrush. Maybe it was somebody stealing his food or cutting him off in line at the market or something like that. I'm not sure what it was, but there was something that got underneath Peter's skin. And he comes to Jesus and said, how many times do I have to forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? That's a lot. It feels like a fair amount. And where Peter's getting this number is actually Old Testament law. What do I mean by Old Testament law? Well, our Bible is broken up into 2 big chunks. Old Testament, life before Jesus. New Testament, life with and after Jesus on earth. So those are the 2 big chunks of our Bible. And in the Old Testament, God had given the people the rules and the law of, hey, this is how we can conduct ourselves. And it wasn't, how should I put this? It was set up to limit the amount of evil that would happen, right? So it was good, but it wasn't the goal. Jesus was the goal. So that's why Jesus comes on the scene and says, hey, I perfected the law. I'm what it looks like to have a perfect law. Follow me, and that's what a perfect life is going to look like. That's why we try to model everything we do after Jesus, because he gives us the power to live that life. So when he's saying, hey, 7 times, this is probably what Peter had grown up being taught. Hey, you only have to forgive this person 7 times, and then you can give them the cold shoulder. Then you can ice them out. Then you can ghost them. You don't have to talk to them again. Or you can say, you know what? They really messed up. The relationship is now over. So he'd probably grown up with that type of teaching. Some of us, we think that's kind of harsh, right? We think, it should just be mercy and grace all the time. We should forgive everything. But how many times do we forgive our sibling? After 2 or 3 times, we're like, you know what? I'm done with this. I remember I used to annoy my brother all the time. Sometimes on purpose, sometimes not on purpose. But I remember that I used to like tap my fingers all the time. All the time. I'd be tapping my fingers on like the desk, and I knew it bothered him, and I did it anyway. My brother could have looked at me and been like, only 7 times, that's it. That would have been very merciful for him, because he ended up having to forgive me over and over and over and over. He endured with me. Thank you. So this is kind of what Peter grew up believing. I'm sure that you have a philosophy about that as well. Maybe it's hurt me once, I'll forgive you. Hurt me twice, never again. Maybe your policy is a little bit more strict. Hey, if there's ever a breach of trust, we're done. We're through. Maybe perhaps it's the other and opposite direction, and it's just as extreme, but in the opposite direction. Maybe you never speak up, and you think everybody can sin against you, and you're just kind of supposed to endure. You're just kind of supposed to make do. Jesus is here to kind of set us straight with how many times we need to forgive people. And Peter's suggestion is, hey, I've heard 7. Is that right? So, Lord, how often should I forgive someone who sins against me? 7 times? Jesus says, no, not 7 times, Jesus replied, but 70 times 7. That's a lot. I'm not even great at math, but that's a lot. That feels like an awful lot. And whenever we see something like that, sometimes we make the mistake of taking it literally. And if you watched VeggieTales or you're good at math, you would know that that's 490, right? That's a lot of times to forgive someone of one thing. That's endless, it feels like. And that's exactly the point. Jesus isn't saying that we have to forgive people 490 times for tapping their fingers and aggravating their sibling. He's being a little sarcastic. He's being a little bit, how should I put this? He's being a little bit funny. This is kind of his way of telling a joke and being dramatic, because Peter's asking essentially the wrong question. Peter's saying, how many times until I get to be mean to this person? How many times until this person's done and has no more chances? And Jesus is trying to reframe the idea and trying to get us to look at it from a different perspective and saying, wait a second, what is it in your heart that can't wait until you no longer have to forgive someone? Let's talk about that for a second. Because oftentimes we want the person or the situation to just hurry up and be better. Just hurry up and be better. And that's understandable at some level because it's causing us pain and the other person is not doing what they're supposed to do. So there should be not an anxious, but there should be an anticipation of, I can't wait for this to get better. Can't wait until I don't have to forgive this person for that thing, or that person doesn't have to forgive me for getting on their nerves, or for disobeying, or for lying about them. I can't wait until they don't have to forgive me for that. There should be a healthy longing for that. But that's not what Peter was coming to Jesus about. He was saying, are we there yet? How many of y'all have ever taken a long road trip before? Maybe you went to Tahoe, you went up to Oregon or Washington, maybe you went down to the Grand Canyon, something like that. You drove there, and the first question, 10 minutes in, are we there yet? That's what Peter is asking. It's like a long car ride. I remember when I went with my parents, well, I had to because I was like 8 years old, right? They didn't ask my opinion. I would have said, yes, I wanted to go. But we went on a trip from where we were living at the time, which was Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we went to, I believe it was Marshfield, Wisconsin, to see my grandma and my grandpa. Love my grandma and my grandpa. Love all the family up in Wisconsin. The car ride was not fun because the car did not have air conditioning in it. We had packed all of what seemed like we owned into like a 96 green station wagon. So really small car, packed everything that we owned, it felt like, into the car. No air conditioning, summertime in Oklahoma, which if you don't know about the summertime in Oklahoma, you are among the few and the chosen cherished people. It's like 110 degrees during the summer because it's right out in the middle of the desert for the most part. So the summers are really hot. And I just remember being in the car going from Oklahoma to Wisconsin during the summer with luggage packed around me, my little brother right beside me, and just sweat dripping off my face going, are we there yet? I'm about done. We're 15 minutes into the ride and I'm going, Mom, can I have some water? Are we done yet? Are we there yet? That's a healthy anticipation of like being to the destination. And sometimes we just want the person to be better. We want the situation to be resolved. And we understand, hey, if we hang in there, we'll get to the final destination. For me, that day, that time, it was to get to see Grandma and Grandpa, to play with my cousins. Of course I want that. It was a ton of fun. And I would have went through that 100 more times to be able to be there with my family and get to hang out with them. But in the moment, it felt really tough. Sometimes when we get offended, when we get hurt, when we get sinned against, it feels like a never-ending car ride. It feels like we're trapped. But if we can keep the final destination of forgiveness in mind, it can help us remember, wait a second, there's something at the end of this that actually makes sense and that's going to be better for both of us. I'm going to endure in this relationship where that person is not perfect yet, but I'm forgiving them. Or I'm not perfect yet, and I'm going to ask their forgiveness. I'm going to go on this journey with this person, and the final destination is going to be worth it. Forgiveness is going to be worth it because forgiveness leaves the door open for restoration as the final destination. I wrote it, it rhymed, I'm proud of it. Forgiveness leaves the door open for restoration as our final destination. How many of y'all have ever lost a friend before? And you're like, I just could not be friends with them. I did forgive them, but I couldn't trust them the same way. Or they couldn't trust me, and I've changed since then, and I've grown and I've matured, but I understand they just couldn't trust me the way they used to. Because that there's no longer a friendship, but there is forgiveness. Sometimes it goes that way. Hopefully not. But forgiveness at least leaves the door open for the final destination being restoration, the friendship being restored, the relationship being restored. The good news is that Jesus goes on this journey with us, and this is the way he sees us. Jesus isn't just saying, hey, you got to go do the work, Peter. You got to be better than me because I'm 100% man, 100% God, and I get cheat codes on this thing. Good luck, Peter. That's not what Jesus is saying. What Jesus is actually saying is really good news for you and me. Why? Because that means that's the way he sees me. That means when I mess up, in his mind, he goes, 7 times 70, baby, it's infinite. 7 times 70. Sam's got way more grace to be given. He's not sitting there with a little tablet going, oh, he did again. One closer to never being my friend again. He's not sitting there doing that. So Jesus is saying, hey, let's flip this right side up. The way the world does it, the way Sam wants to do it sometimes, the way you and your friends operate sometimes is actually upside down. Let's let Jesus flip it right side up and say, how come we're so anxious to cut people off? How come we're so anxious to say, that was the last time? As a matter of fact, let's look at it from this perspective. How much grace can I give this person? And how hard can I work in order for forgiveness to be that final destination and a restored relationship to be that final destination? Like I said before, up at the top, sometimes there's scenarios where forgiveness is possible, but there's no longer potential for a relationship. That person hurt you in a way that they should never have even thought of. That person wounded you, and there can be forgiveness, but there shouldn't be trust. There can be forgiveness, but there might never be friendship. But what forgiveness does is it at least leaves the door open for there being a restored relationship. At least it leaves the door open. I'm going to leave that right there and let that kind of sit for a second. Forgiveness leaves the door open for restoration as the final destination. Jesus sees us this way. Y'all, forgiveness takes practice. The good news is we live in a world where people are constantly messing up, so we can get really good at forgiveness. The best people with the most friends, the most gracious people, the most kind people, the people that you want to be around and be like, if you look at them and examine them closely, I'll bet you any money those are people that are really, really good at forgiving other people and really good at hanging on to the forgiveness that Jesus gives them too. It's not just, hey, how can I be a doormat for somebody? It's also, how do I receive the forgiveness that God gave me? And so that I can walk with my head held high and say, I'm a child of God. I don't have to live in the sin and the mess and the mistakes of yesterday when I lied about that friend, or when I cheated on that test, or when I hurt that person with the words that I said, or when I told the inaccurate story that made me look better than I was. I don't have to live in that anymore. I can raise my head and go, no, I'm a child of God. He's forgiven that. He's not sitting in a tablet with heaven going, he's one step closer to not being forgiven. You just wait. The good thing about this, and I want us to reread this, and I want us to get this in our hearts. So let's reread it here just for a second. It says, then Peter asked him, Lord, how often should I forgive someone? He's asking with the end in mind. How many times I got to do this? How much homework do we have to do? How many laps do I need to run? How many push-ups do I have to do? He's seeing it like that. What Jesus is saying is 70 times 7. Just do it, and it's going to be good for you. This is God's heart towards us. So it can help us understand that this can be our heart towards others as well. He can help us forgive others and help us find our forgiveness in him as well, so that forgiveness is our final destination. Here's the cool thing about what Peter's doing. I know we spent some time kind of beating him up and giving him a bad rap because he asked the question with like, oh, how much do I have to do? But here's the thing that he did better than me sometimes, maybe you sometimes. He asked Jesus. That's prayer. Some of us, sometimes you and I, we don't even bother to pray. We just write somebody off. We just think, well, I guess my sin is my final destination. I guess I'm always going to be a liar. I guess I'm always going to be someone who doesn't tell the truth. I guess I'm always going to be the hot-tempered one. I guess I'm always going to be the one who shuts down and doesn't give grace. And we think that's our final destination. But what we don't understand is Jesus is right there saying, hey, grace from me to you, endless. Mercies are new every single morning. And we get to talk to him about it. So what do? When we think, oh my goodness, how many times do I have to forgive this person? Well, it's not 7 times. It's actually infinite, because that's the amount of grace God has for us. So when we think to ourselves, oh, this is stressing me out, I can't do this anymore with this person, maybe it is time to restructure the relationship and say, you know what? I can't trust that person with information the way I used to be able to. I can't trust that person with my presence. I can't be around them as much as I used to. It's not safe for me, but I do forgive them. And it's always a good time, whenever you're feeling like that, to pray about it. Before you make any decision like that, it's always great to pray about it. That's exactly what Peter did, and he got a really good answer, an answer that you and I are still using today. So whenever we feel frustrated and we're like, how many more times do I have to forgive this person? Good response right away when we feel that and recognize it, identify it, talk to God about it. Ask him, God, I'm having trouble at school with fill in the blank. They are always on my nerves. They never stop talking during class. They're always around me at the lunch table. They're always saying things that seem so hurtful. God, what should I do about that? What do I see in your word that helps me resolve those issues already? And lastly, you can always ask a leader. You can ask myself. You can ask one of your small group leaders here at MSM. You can even ask one of your leaders online and say, hey, you know what? I've got a situation that I need your input on. It doesn't have to be a big one. We can handle big scenarios. We can do hard things. But if it seems small to you, it's not. If you're thinking about it for more than a second, bring it up to us. We would love to be able to walk you through what it's like to exercise that muscle of forgiveness, because we all have. I'll tell one last story, and then we'll get out of here for the time. My brother, one time, God bless his heart. My brother, oh, I love him so much. He was about 6 years old, and we were living in Oklahoma at the time, which meant I was probably about 8 years old, and he was sitting on an electrical box, right? There was no danger in sitting on the electrical box. It was maybe like 4 feet off the ground. One of those big green electrical boxes that stand up exposed out of the ground, but it has a shell over it so that it's not like dangerous to you and me. We were so bored that we were just kind of on top of the electrical box, hanging out, just letting the sun bake our mind, right? It's probably 95 degrees in Oklahoma. That's all we were doing. We had some outside time. We were sitting there, and I was like jumping off the electrical box, and I was like, you should do it too. My brother, he was like, nah, I'm not doing that, because he was smart. And I encouraged him over and over and over again, probably with a more voice that lent towards telling him to do it. Influential was what they call me. But then he wouldn't, and I knew he wouldn't. So I forget, and it's still a little hazy in my mind, so please forgive me. I forget if I pushed him off the box or if he finally just jumped as I got closer to him. But he jumped off the box, and it was maybe 2 or 3 feet, maybe 4 feet off the ground at the most. So it wasn't like a big, long, scary, dangerous jump. It was just something we were doing to be entertained. I remember there was a pole sticking out of the ground. It was like a metal rod sticking out of the ground, and his knee went right towards it. And it got a big gash right on his knee. Like if this were his knee, the pole went like right there and skinned the whole thing. So like split open, there's blood everywhere. And now I'm like, oh no, my parents are gonna be so upset. And they handled it really, really well. Thankfully, it did not need stitches, but still, my brother was like, had a cut on his knee that was basically my fault. And what did he do? I was so anxious and I was so scared that he wouldn't forgive me. And I looked at him as we were going inside with his bloody knee. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And he's like, it's okay. And that was his mood for the whole thing. He was like, it's all right. I'm not mad. I love my brother so much because he gave me the opportunity to have grace. It left the door open for restoration as the final destination. People are gonna make mistakes. Now, sometimes that does redefine the relationship, but forgiveness always leaves that door open for restoration as our final destination. That's the important thing that I want to make sure that we remember today. Leaves the door open for restoration as the final destination. If my brother would have been somebody that was just never forgiving, we probably wouldn't have had a relationship because I mess up. If I was the type of person that was constantly purposefully trying to make the same mistake over and over and over again just to aggravate him, at a certain point in time, my brother would have had to redefine the relationship and say, hey, it's not healthy for us to be this close. You're going to need to change something. I can't continue to be around you. But thankfully, I stopped encouraging him to jump off electrical boxes, and he forgave me for it, and we still have a great relationship today. I'm going to land it right there. If you have any questions about, gosh, this person's aggravating me, I feel like they sinned against me, I feel like they hurt me, talk to God about it first, and then talk to a leader about it. We love you. Peace.